It's the Deep Slant 101 presented by Xfinity. My guest today, wide receiver Chris Conley. Chris had a big week. Not only did you score your first touchdown as a Houston Texan, you became a dad. So congratulations on both fronts.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a lot going on last week, but thankfully everybody here in the building helped me with that, with the whole process and even preparing for a game through that while being back and forth from the hospital. It's got a good group of guys here and a good staff, and was able to get ready for that game. Didn't quite have the outcome that we wanted, but I'm excited for the future of what this team could do.
Yeah, we're excited to see you as well. We saw a lot of you in camp, and then, throughout these last few games, it seems like you were getting closer and closer. Then you finally get that big touchdown call, the Fleaflicker. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had a Fleaflicker touchdown before, or was that your first?
I think that might be my first. I've had a couple that could have been called. For some reason, a flea flicker is a really hard play to pull off. There's a lot of things that have to happen. There's a timing that everybody on the offense has to be on, and you can't really see the other people when they're deciding, okay, it's time to turn it back into a pass play. And for some reason, the way that we practiced it and the way that we executed it, it kind of ended up being that perfect timing, that perfect balance. We were able to make that play work.
It seems like that would be, from a receiver's point of view, that would be that'd be a little bit more stressful than just say a normal touchdown, because you're saying there's a lot of things that have to happen just right.
I think that, on any play where a receiver, catches the ball or scores a touchdown, there's a lot of things that have to happen. The protection has to hold up. The quarterback has to see you and deliver a good ball. You have to run a good route. So there's a lot of things that go on every play. But yes, a flea flicker, it compounds that even more. But the fact that we were able to pull that one off, especially with us putting that in such a short amount of time, is good for the guys that we have in that offensive room.
What about for you personally? What's the craziest touchdown you've ever been a part of at any level?
The craziest touchdown that I've been a part of, this is such a bad answer, but I'm going to do it anyway. My first playoff touchdown was actually here in 2015.
That is a bet. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I was in 2015. I was playing for the Chiefs at the time.
Remember that game? Yes.
In I think it was maybe the third quarter of that game, I was put in the game on a play that I didn't rep all week, a play that I was told wasn't mine. It was for somebody else, and that guy couldn't run it, I guess, at the time. And so I ran a play that I hadn't practiced or, had no experience with, and caught the ball. And I just remember just the sounds and the lights and everything. Playoff football is something that's uniquely special. And I'll always remember that moment.
Well, that brings up an interesting question, because with the touchdown that you did catch, was that a play that you had that was in practice for several weeks, or did it just sort of pop up that week? Had you been waiting for that play to be called, or is that just something that during that week you sort of knew that was going to be the week that you got executed?
That was a week. That was a play that was put in last week. That was a play that was put in specifically for that game. Now, there are plays that you have drawn up sometimes and you don't get to them on the call sheet, and those will carry over from week to week until they get called. But then you also have some plays that are kind of drawn up in the dirt as the week goes on and say, hey, this would be a good play. And you got to get everyone on the same page. You don't have that many times to rep. Some plays you don't even rep. There could be I've seen trick plays before that you didn't even get to rep in practice, but you just called them and they worked. And so it's being on the same page with the guys that you're playing with, having a good feel and sense for how you're trying to affect the defense, and then getting the ball in the right person's hands.
All right. So one of the first things that I learned about you when you signed with the Texans, I write the series called Get to Know, and just in a very cursory search of you, saw your film Retribution, the the Star Wars fan film that you made at Georgia. So I learned very quickly that you're a big Star Wars buff. So yeah. I watched it. It's 26 minutes. It feels like a short feature film. It's pretty intense. You've got stormtroopers, you've got battle scenes, you've got special effects, you've got cameos, you've got extras. How long did something like that take for you to put together? You wrote it, directed it, and starred in it, right?
Too long. It took me too long. I think that the idea gathering process for that probably took me a month and a half. At that point, I didn't know anything about writing scripts, and so it was really just an outline. of what I wanted to happen. Then after that, it was more of like the idea of, okay, I wanted to have these sort of choreographed fights that were in it. And so then that took finding the people who would be involved in that took me another month, and choreographing and practicing those fights took another month. And then putting together, gathering these groups of people and finding the people who had the knowledge that I didn't have at the time to make something like that happen. So all in all, that process probably took 6 to 8 months. And I learned a lot from it. You know, they'd say if you don't look back at your earlier films and cringe, then you didn't do it right. But I that's like the number one thing that people, when they talk about my love for like storytelling or filmmaking, that's the number one thing that they bring up, because obviously that was my first one, and it's also, it kind of went viral back then. But I just, it makes me cringe.
What
all of
makes
the
you cringe
things.
about? I thought that was for a college student to put something like that together. I expected far less, to be honest, because it was a college production, but it seemed pretty high quality. I mean, I don't know how much money you had and how much time you had to do it, but what makes
None.
you cringe about it?
None really, but it's the fact that what I know now about storytelling and being efficient with the time that you have a viewer. Obviously, it's 26 minutes long. I didn't know anything about what a short film is. You want to keep a short film under 15 minutes.
It's not a short film.
It's
That's why I call it
definitely
a
not.
mini. I call it a mini feature.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, I crossed the line. I crossed the line big time. But there were so many ideas that I had, that I put all of my ideas into the film. And one of the things that you learn as you mature as a writer and as a creator, and there's a saying, and they say it's like killing your little babies. And it's like all the little things that you love, all the little ideas that you think are so cool. When it comes to a project, you have to learn how to get rid of them. You have to learn how to cut them out. You have to cut all the excess and the fat off the bone, and really just leave the meat there, and get to the point and grab a viewer's attention, keep that attention, convey and tell a story in as short a time as possible, and then get out. And so that's really what good filmmaking is. Good filmmaking can tell. Great filmmaking can tell so many storylines in a short amount of time, in a concise amount of space. And that's really what I've been working on and learning. And when I watch that, it's just idea vomit, and it's just all over the
Maybe
place.
you needed an editor. You needed someone with, an objective point of view to
I
come
had
in
an
and
editor. I had an editor. I didn't edit that video at that
Oh,
point.
okay.
At that
Your
point,
editor loved all your babies too. I take it.
just
Yeah.
put everything in there. At that point, I didn't know how to operate a camera myself. At that point, I didn't know how to. I could use basic editing software. I didn't know anything about tempo or anything like that. So, editing and color grading weren't something that I did. So I had other people doing all of that, and when I saw things at the end, I just had, some basic. Oh well, I don't really like how long this is or how long, but it wasn't really in depth. Now when I do a film, I'd either like to get sent every single draft that comes from an editor, or I'd like to be in the room with them as they're editing it. And because really your vision has to be as close to that original vision that you wrote as possible. And then also, like, you have to be the person to, when it comes down to it, is willing to cut things short and say, hey, we're going over here. Hey, we're lingering too long on this moment. Or in the rare chance that there is an artistic moment that really happens, that shines through on set, let it breathe a little bit. And I feel like that is something that, as a director, for your vision, you have to be there to say, because an editor might have a completely different sense of what's going on the screen, and a small edit can completely change the tone of a piece.
These feel like nuanced. These feel like very small, nuanced things that you just gather over time. But it sounds to me like you want to direct again, want to make another movie again sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Is that what you think
Yeah.
that you might do it again?
I've done something creative every off season that I've been in the league, whether that's shooting a short film, producing like the miniseries that we did here with the Comment and Cravings. I've done something. I've probably shot, at this point, I think I've shot 5 or 6 short films since Retribution, and every single time trying to tackle another hurdle in the filmmaking world. There's a lot of problems that arise when you're trying to tell a story. There's so many things that come up, and there's a lot of do's and don'ts. And I like to try to tackle the don'ts so that I can understand why it's a don't. And so I know if there comes a time where I need to use that technique or need to be in this situation, I've done it before and I can tackle it. Things like show don't tell. I've done like entire short films that have no audio. I've done a short film where I had no crew, where I did it as a run and gun one man. I set the camera. I pulled the focus. I was in it. I edited it. I colored it. I did everything. I've done short film where I used anamorphics, big, heavy, expensive lenses that add to your time on set and the preparation. And I've tried to really like push myself to learn more about even roles that I might not be in charge of on set. On a lot of my larger projects, I'm just directing. I'm just the writer director. I don't have to pull focus. I'm not the gaffer. I don't have to light things.
Mm-hmm.
But I did all of that just so that I would have a greater knowledge base for the next time that I'm on set, so I can be maybe a little more technical when I'm talking to my crew. I can be a little more sensitive when I'm talking to my actors and coaching them through a scene and trying to get their best performance.
I feel like, well, when I was watching Retribution, you had Todd Gurley. He had a cameo, and you had your coach in there. And it makes me wonder if you did a film now, a Star Wars sort of a film with your current Texans teammates. Who would you cast, and in what role would you cast them? I feel like you got some potential there in the locker room. There's
a lot of potential. There's tons. I don't think I would do it again per se, but because for the reason that
hypothetical purposes,
everyone says that they want to be in a film until they realize what the call time is. Obviously, Retribution was my first project. I was in college. I had nothing else to do. I could literally be out on campus shooting all day and not eat, and it'd be fine. And college students had no problem with that now. But now when you have like actual crews, you have limits, you got salaries, you got this, and there's rules. And so that's the reason call times are so early. So everybody goes, I want to be in your next film. And you tell them, okay, the call time for extras is 4:30 or 5 a.m. and none of them show up.
And you're not getting paid either because
exactly.
It's a low budget.
You're not getting paid. I have to pay. There's certain people I have to pay that have to be there. You're not getting paid. But who would I cast?
Yeah, let's just say that they're all really willing to just show up at 4 a.m. for call time. You don't have to pay them. They're going to happily do it. Who would you cast? Who would be your leading protagonist, leading villain, your extras? How would you Star Wars characters?
Villain?
Let's put your teammates in Star Wars characters.
I'm going Sith Lord is the Sith Lord is definitely Tyrod. Not because he's a bad guy, but because he just has the hair for it, right?
I was going to say his personality.
He has very, very dramatic. I call him Frederick Douglass all the time because when he takes out his braids, he's got the Frederick Douglass do going on. And I can already see what I would want makeup to do with his eyebrows and his beard and stuff. I can make Tyrod look like a menace.
Okay.
And so I would definitely have him as, like the old Sith Lord pulling the strings and things like that. If I had to find, I think my comedic relief would definitely be Mark Ingram.
Oh, for sure.
100% would be Mark Ingram. I don't know what I would do with Mark. I might, just for comedic relief, I might make Mark a Jawa or Mark an Ewok just because he's hilarious. And the fact that people would know that's Mark Ingram under there would just make it even
super funny.
It even more funny. I guess I could do. There's so many options. And things that you could do. You need your gunslinger, your young gun. We can make Han Solo could be Davis. Davis could be the Han Solo type character. He doesn't talk enough for that though. So you got to know the personalities of guys.
Davis
doesn't talk a lot. He's not the smooth talker. We could go Justin Reed. For
Han Solo?
Yeah, we can do.
We're just swapping him out. Yeah, Justin Reed for Han Solo.
Yeah, we'll swap him out. He's got to be the silent type.
Yeah.
Pharaoh could be Chewbacca because they're the same size. Technically.
So
I mean, there's a lot of
what about Luke?
ways that we could go with
Luke?
Luke Skywalker, man, that's tough.
Luke, Darth Vader. You've got some
That is tough. I mean, I am
Yoda.
100% a fan of originality. If you're going to make even a fan film of an established IP such as Star Wars, you shouldn't use established characters. The universe is so big that you do it a disservice by recasting an icon instead of telling a new story
Oh, okay.
of someone
You
else.
just create new stories.
Create new stories, create new characters. That's what I'm hoping that they're going to do with the company that actually owns the IP, because there's so many great things that could happen, and I think the best way to respect it and to respect Star Wars fans is to tell new stories. And I think that what you've seen from these Disney Plus shows, The Mandalorian and things, have really shown that. And that's my serious Star Wars fan talking there.
Well, okay, so I have a serious Star Wars question for you. So when you go, for people that haven't watched any of it, there's always this discussion of
On what order?
What's the order? Do you watch it in I mean, I have my opinion, and I'm sure you have yours. Do you watch it in chronological order, as in how the series of events actually happen, or do you watch it in the order of release? Do you watch all the movies first and then watch the shows, or do you intersperse the TV shows into the movies, into some sort of timeline there?
So I'll put it this way. The shows always need to come after the movies, because the
Agree.
shows can introduce things and concepts that you don't understand at all. Now, the only exception to that is The Mandalorian. It can kind of stand alone on its own. It is a space western. It is a gunslinger's show. So you can watch it all on its own and know nothing about Star Wars.
Right, that's
because
true.
you're just watching a western. But all the other TV shows, you need to have a little bit of context with those. Now, when it comes to the films, I always break it down this way. If you are a person who appreciates the art and the history of the film industry, I'd say watch them in the order that they came out, because each of the movies were absolutely groundbreaking and revolutionary
For their time,
when it came
yeah.
to VFX, when it came to storytelling, everything, the visuals, the music. It was all so ahead of its time, and it connected with a whole generation. So if you appreciate the art of film, 100% watch them in the order that they were made, and you'll learn a lot about where certain techniques came from. You'll learn a lot about where other influences in sci-fi and action and drama, where they were gleaned from Star Wars, which gleaned from Dune. And,
Okay, side note.
you
Well,
know-
I agree with you, because I think that there's certain surprises that when the movies came out, the fans were shocked and surprised.
Yes.
And I think if you watch it out of order, you won't have that same reaction that some of us had when we watched it the first
This
time
is the
around.
only caveat, though. If you're not someone who respects the art and the history of film, I would say watch them in the order that they happen, which is watching the
Like episode
the
one and
prequels,
then-
one,
yeah.
2, 3, because I feel like some people don't give it the time to get into the story. If they're watching an old movie and they don't appreciate old movies for what they are, they go, "Why am I watching this? Like,
They
I
just,
don't
like,
even
get to the-
understand what's happening. Get to the action." And really, those movies weren't about the action. They did have groundbreaking action. They did have Industrial Light and Magic did have these groundbreaking, VFX scenes and all of these things. But like, it wasn't about that. It was about the story. It was about the characters and their development. And so, if you don't appreciate that, definitely watch the new ones, because they will grab you with the action. And you will be able to glean a little bit from the story, and maybe after watching those 3, then you'll be interested enough to say, okay, well, let's
watch
see
these
what
old
happens.
movies, too.
Let's see what happens after that, and then they'll stay connected. But really, like, the getting into the Star Wars fandom for a lot of people is about being at the impressionable age where those movies could take you somewhere far from here. And you can learn things about morality. You can learn things about the struggle between good and evil. You can learn things about being enough in a world that sometimes doesn't think that, or from the outside will say that you're not. And that right there connects with a lot of people.
That's deep
the reason
stuff, Chris. That's really deep.
Such a fandom around it.
All right, you've always been into sci-fi and science, and I read somewhere that you, when you were in 3rd grade, won a science fair competition. Do you remember what your project was?
Yeah, so it was for a science fair, and I was one of the kids who really hated science fairs, because
Really?
I didn't want to spend a week of my life preparing. They had those cardboard fold out
Yeah.
things. I didn't want to go home.
That's a presentation.
And
It's not a project.
And
Yeah.
do something, make a presentation about something that 100 kids before me had done. And so I was looking for any loophole that I could find not to make a presentation about something that everyone already knew about.
Okay.
And one of the loopholes I found was in the fine print, it said, or an invention.
So you invented something.
It was about a process and it said or invention. They really didn't want you doing inventions. Most people were making, volcanoes or talking about photosynthesis and stuff. But I basically took the part where it said an invention and I looked for a problem in our world to solve it. And that was at the time where Razor scooters were the biggest thing.
That doesn't seem that long ago. Okay, you were in 3rd grade when that happened.
Everyone was riding Razor scooters.
Yeah.
Those metal scooters that when they hit you in the shin, you got a big knot and
Right.
it hurt. Yeah, everybody was riding those. And I noticed that everyone in my cul-de-sac, all the kids had them. Even if they had the off-brand, the cheap ones, everybody had a scooter, and that was just the mode of transportation. Oh, I'm going to Jimmy's house. I'm taking my scooter, and they could literally walk across the lawn to Jimmy's house.
Yeah,
but they rode the scooter. But when they would get there, they would just drop the scooter on the ground and go into his garage or something. So there were scooters all over the lawns, and I was like, you know what? They need scooter racks just like they have bike racks.
Oh.
And so it was a really primitive. Obviously I was no carpenter or builder. I made a primitive scooter rack that you could slide your scooter in, with your handlebars, and it would just go in here and it would stay upright.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to say you invented a kickstand for the scooter, but that's even better. So a scooter stand. So that won you the science fair.
It wasn't a science fair that I won. It actually was submitted by one of the teachers at my school to the National Young Inventors Program.
Oh.
They have a competition every year where they take inventions across the country and they basically try to identify young innovators and basically support them, give them an opportunity to continue to develop their idea, and basically they get a small scholarship and basically say, hey, don't stop inventing. This is how our country basically moves industries forward. And so I won that. It was the Craftsman NSTA Young Inventors Program, and I was one of 8 finalists.
This makes so much more sense because I read the prize, which was a very random assortment of things to me because I thought it was a science fair. It was a $5,000 savings bond, a trip to the Nationals to Chicago with your family, and then a visit with Bob Vila.
Yeah.
Of this old house, which I think as a 3rd grader, did you know who Bob Vila was?
I knew Bob Vila because Bob Vila was in all the Craftsman commercials back then.
Oh, yeah.
Every single Craftsman tool commercial and building this and that. So I knew who Bob Vila was.
Were you super excited to meet? But do you remember meeting Bob Vila?
I was, but I remember thinking man, my idea is okay. I'm not really sure what these other kids were, and boy, was I right. When I got there, these other kids' inventions, I told you I made this little primitive. It was like a little block of wood, and I had these angled, pieces of metal that were drilled into it so that it was just wide enough for a scooter. And it was that's cute. And I'm watching these other kids. This one kid invented a way to a machine to automatically, I think it was to water crops or something like that. And I'm
wow,
you're the same age as me? I was oh yeah, I'm in a room full of savants. And I just was
but they're not going to be Razor scooters on your cul-de-sac anymore. So that was a huge problem at the time.
Yeah, well, the scooters aren't as big of a thing anymore. But I still do see, these bird and lime scooters all over the ground.
They're everywhere.
They could have installed scooter racks all the way back then. We could still be using them.
All right, so are you into Squid Game?
I watched the first episode. Was it first episode or first 2 episodes last week? And I am intrigued. Now, the problem with that is I want to binge watch it. But
which is what I've heard people generally do.
Knowing that I watched the first episode with my wife, and she just had a kid, it's not really timing up with the ability to binge watch it, and I know she's going to be upset if I watch it.
Oh, you can't watch it without her.
I can't watch it anymore because I started it with. If I would have started it without her, I'd be already done right now.
So you're a fan, I take it.
I am.
You love it, okay?
Yeah, I am. I think it's great. I think some people don't like watching foreign shows and films, and they don't like subtitles, and they don't like.
Well, I didn't think that was
the.
I thought the issue with Squid Game wasn't so much the subtitles as it was the gore. from what I understand, just from what I've heard about it.
I don't mind it.
You don't mind the gore?
I don't mind it.
The premise is like for people that don't know, it's basically a childhood game that you play, and if you fail, you die. It's pretty easy. So what would be your Squid Game of choice? What would be your childhood game of choice?
I don't know. I haven't watched the whole first season yet, so I don't really.
But do you have a game from your childhood that you think that you would bet on yourself that you would win that game?
I mean, I think that the whole idea of childhood games is just, and I think this is where the show really succeeds, is the whole idea of the fact that when you played childhood games as a kid, you didn't really fear anything. You know, when you were a kid, you thought you were invincible. Mm-hmm. You jumped off the jungle gym, playing the floor is lava. You would climb across the highest part because the floor was lava. But you were literally fearless and really playing with the idea of something that we relate to in such a area of comfort, and then flipping it on its head and making it dangerous. I think that's one of the psychological bits of that show that just makes it so intriguing to everyone. But I feel like if I had to pick, that's scary. I love playing dodgeball, but I feel like if you're playing Squid Game dodgeball, you're gonna die.
Well, you're a professional football player, so you do have a leg up on your competition now.
I'm in my mind, when I think about playing dodgeball, I'm thinking about playing with dodgeball with other people like me. And that's a tough game, dodgeball. I'm not thinking about playing with the people I played with.
I'm pretty sure that you're representing
when I was
society.
in third grade.
Yeah, or normal society.
I'm playing dodgeball.
You're also a wide receiver, so
with 10 other me's.
No, yeah, of course.
That is not a bet I want to take.
No,
or if I'm playing dodgeball in Squid Game with the guys in this locker room, and it's not just the linemen, I'm not taking that bet.
Yeah,
people are too athletic at this point.
That makes sense to me. I'm thinking in society, you'd probably do pretty well with Squid Game dodgeball, if I had to guess.
Hey, when your life's on the line, you never know
what people will do. All right, Chris. Well, you mentioned the baby, so I have to ask you, what's surprised you most? I know it's early on, but anything really stand out to you or surprise you about being a dad so far?
I think I would say the fact that she's very attentive. She's very I get the best. I tell people I get the best parts of the baby because when I come home, she's just awake, eyes open, not crying, not screaming, nothing. She just wants to sit there and hang out. But I have help. My sister was here, my mother-in-law was here, and they have been watching the baby during the night, so I've been able to sleep at night and do my recovery and get ready for practice. But I definitely was not expecting her to have such a 180 change. She goes from being so cool, calm, and everything's fine with dad.
Uh-huh.
And then I, get downstairs in the morning as I'm leaving, and it's like, hey, how'd you sleep? And it's like, she didn't. It's really? I've never seen her do that.
She just seems so happy when I'm around. I don't know what's going on. She
doesn't, if she cries around me, it's for just a couple minutes, and then it's just cool. She's just chilling.
Wow.
Yeah. But then she's up all night.
Well, you're sleeping, so you wouldn't. You just have to take everyone else's word for it that she was.
Yeah,
Good for you for getting some sleep, though.
She's been great. She's wide-eyed and beautiful.
All right. Well, congratulations. A great week. Can't wait to see what the rest of the season has in store. And you know what? I'm gonna have to hit you up again when some of these Star Wars, these prequels and sequels come out and get your thoughts on them.
I know. I'm terrified, but I hope they're.
I feel like you're the pro. I have to ask you.
I'm such a fan. That I'm hopeful with the leadership that they've kind of allowed to do their thing now, letting directors tell their stories instead of telling a director what story to tell. I think that's a good model for filmmaking, and I hope that they continue to do that. Let people tell the stories. You brought them in to tell a story. Let them tell it.
I like it. He's very hopeful and optimistic about Star Wars.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right. Thanks, Chris. Thank you so much for the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching, and go Texans. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell for new content.